So, I've just become the most recent person to fail at writing the next great American novel in a single month, which is not surprising, and I did not expect to finish writing anything. I did write about 24,000 words, so that's just under 100 pages or somewhere thereabouts, I think. Um, I don't know. It's sort of one of those things where I have no real expectation, but I also don't sort of know what to do moving forward because the world is in this very strange place, right? Where the pandemic has happened, and unfortunately, a lot of people are just no longer with us because they're dead, either directly from the coronavirus or from sort of secondary effects that have come from just the chaos. But it's mostly been the actual virus, unfortunately. And, or just for better or worse, that's just is the situation. A lot of people are dead from COVID, and some more people are dead because of the effects that COVID has had on society. I don't mean people that have been killed in some sort of violence. I just mean like people's health has been deteriorated in other ways because of the pandemic, and then you know they end up dying for other reasons. I mean things like just cancer, heart disease, the usual suspects. And but on top of that, there's a bunch of people that are dead of the virus. But so it's like this is kind of a good time to be alive because there's going to be a lot of opportunity moving forward. Technology is still accelerating, and there's a labor shortage that's likely to be very persistent now, even if the reason for it is really dark and awful. And the world is sort of more insular in a way that the travel restrictions kind of ebb and flow. We're settling on this granularity of sort of nations, which is what usually happens. The good news is that America stays together, it seems like, but we're going to have to contend with a lot of chaos here. I don't know. Writing is just something I try to do to deal with my life, which is the same with this, but I don't know. It's very emotionally difficult to cope with the situation we're in because, like, this isn't over. There's going to be a wave of COVID deaths every winter, and there's going to be some amount of, like, civil unrest and chaos every year. And that's, I don't think, going to escalate out of control exponentially. It's going to continue to oscillate, which is kind of psychologically stressful because there's ebbing and flowing where there's things will get really worse all of a sudden and then they'll get better all of a sudden and it'll go back and forth. But as you start to see that pattern over the course of time, you see that things aren't going to run out of control all of a sudden, but they might get quite a bit worse all of a sudden, and you never know quite how much worse they're going to get before it starts getting better again. And that's just the reality of the world, though. And if you look at things on geologic timescales, that's what's happened, is life goes on, but truly terrible things do happen sometimes. And those terrible things never seem to succeed at extinguishing life, though. They just make things awful for a while, but then new things blossom from the ashes of whatever terrible fire or painful chaotic thing has happened. And I don't know. I am not done writing. I'm not surprised that I did not write something that will have the potential to be successful in the span of just a month. I think I have a decent concept and I can probably get it to a point where people would actually want to read it. But I doubt that'll be something I could make a career out of. It's something I'll be proud to have done. And hopefully it will convey some information that's actually useful to people and makes their lives better and happier. I still need to get back to work, though. I kind of don't like to just be working on some boring commercial thing right now, but we really need that. We need people working on just plain old semiconductor stuff, and that means for me probably just moving back to San Diego and um, that might actually mean I could work for. It's actually would just be working, I think, for what is it that I think it's just Cisco now, actually. But I don't know who it is, but just working for um, whatever stupid telecom contractor in San Diego bought out this company that used to be there that worked on like fiber optic modems, because I think that's something that's reasonably useful. And that's what my dad did. I'm just not super thrilled with something like that, but I at least have an education, and what I'd really like to do is just teach. That is just teach physics. For now, I think it's better that I focus on just doing a job, because I think society really just needs work done right now. For better or worse, it's not like it was in the '90s where there's this bountiful opportunity to make a bunch of money and everybody's super excited. It's this really depressing. It's like being alive in maybe in I guess the 1360s. It's like, well, there's just been this awful like plague that's come through, and all these people have died, and you're kind of questioning like what anything even means anymore. But it's a more important time than ever to believe in something more than myself, and that means educating a future generation, and educating a future generation that's more than just my own progeny, but without sort of any expectation of anything in return, because people always want to monetize that right away. And I would be very happy if I got to teach as a profession, especially if I sort of got to have the rest of my life be how I'd like it to be. But I don't know how things are going to turn out, but I believe everything happens for a reason, and things tend to work themselves out a certain way, and I think a lot of people believe that. So we'll see what happens. I'm not trying to be a YouTuber. I am trying to be a writer. That's what Natalie Wynn failed at doing. That's the irony. It's like I kind of put all this momentum and energy into being a YouTuber and realized really I should just be a writer. And she actually did the opposite. She sat down and tried to be a writer because she has a philosophy background. And I was like, oh, I have a physics background. And I was like, I'll just do, that. But it's like, well, I want to do that just for the sake of education. And I don't knock people that do it for a living, but I just want to make sure that that's really, really focused on conveying the sort of education that I was given at a university where people are paid, but the incentive structure is such that you can be fairly confident in the information you're receiving. But also, we live in a time where universities have kind of. I really support conventional university education, but there are some pitfalls, and more importantly, we're just in a state where people can't really get that right now, because you can't really go get that in-person education. But it's sort of, if you can, there are reasons to do that. It's just that we're now exploring what online education could do. Now, I think that writing is something I'll end up being halfway decent at if I continue at it. And that's something I could use to then promote people learning about the actual physics, which then I will try to do on YouTube, but also people should just learn from a university. Again, if you can. But you also shouldn't obstinately insist on going to a university, especially when they're gatekeeping everything with money, which has generally been the case, and it's always been kind of unfair and unreasonable. But, c'est la vie, I guess. I don't know. I'm sick of being miserable, and I'm sick of waiting for a big break, because I know I'm going to have to sort of work for it. But I also now have been shown paths forward that I can take that I think are very potentially good, but I've also been sort of shown the extent to which I do not control the universe, And that's the thing about physics, is you do kind of learn how the universe is deterministic, and you also learn, though, how every attempt at us knowing that determinism for sure for ourselves is going to fail. You know, it's easy enough to come up with a scheme to show how you can try to understand a deterministic universe, and you can very quickly show how you can run into the limitations of a human being trying to make any concrete predictions that are sort of unwavering, because it's like basically it's impossible for a finite thing to, like, you know, like, if you think about it, a computer with a finite amount of computational resources could never simulate an infinite universe. But an infinite universe running according to a deterministic system will remain deterministic in its whole. It's just kind of weird to understand that. I don't know. I I don't know. It just seems like every time I try to control things, I fail. And every time I try to just observe things and understand how they work, I have to understand some very distressing things. But when I endure that distress, I get to understand small sort of components of something really wonderful. And I want to try to convey that. But I don't know. I'm always just guessing, just like everybody else. I just read history a lot, and I understand the world from a scientific point of view. And again, I believe in a mysterious universe, but if you want to know my personal religious beliefs, I am a Christian. I was raised in a Lutheran church. It's, it's not like, oh, the mystery, and then it's just like, oh, and then it's just like, and I'm trying to it's like, that's what I believe. I don't know what the mystery is. What is the real truth? And I don't know. That's the thing that I believe in. But there's something mysterious about the truly unknowable nature of the universe. But that's also why I am particularly hesitant about some conventional religious things, because I know the history of people being superstitious and causing other people harm, when the whole point of a religious belief system is to guide your morality so that you do good things and try to avoid harming others. And it happens sometimes, wars and things like that are a reality of the world. I wouldn't say that, every soldier who died in every war was, doing something evil or wrong. I'd say that they were, in a horrible circumstance, and they also died horribly, and most of them did not choose to be there and did not want to be there. They were born into a circumstance where they were literally given no choice in most circumstances. So I don't know. I don't think it's really fair to just condemn people. I just doesn't seem reasonable to me. So I don't know. I I've been thinking a lot about, like, the state of the world right now, and how it's like it's becoming more insular right at the time when we really need to learn to work together. And it's like, well, maybe that's all just part of maybe this is the end of the world and we're all just about to blow it all up. But I prefer to think that's not what's happening. I prefer to think this is, another bump on the road, but there's never quite a final one. Or if there ever is, it will be because, the last person on Earth just, dies very quietly and peacefully and sort of, like, closes down the last thing that a human needs to do, while artificial intelligence systems then sort of steward the rest of the biosphere and do whatever it is that they're going to do. So I try to sort of take an optimistic view of reality, but we're in a very sort of dire circumstance right now. So what's going to happen? I don't know. And I could tell you that something's going to happen, and that thing is probably going to be a series of causal events that, if you trace it all the way back to the beginning of the universe, you would probably just get that, at some point some idiot decided to create something other than the whole of existence being like one great thing, and why? I don't know. That's just the world. And I'm sure eventually it'll all be, whole again. But that will basically be when, like, there are no more stars, there's no more galaxies, there's no more matter of any sort, and there's no more mass of any sort. There's just black holes decaying everything via Hawking radiation into pure photons, or that's the good news, is the end state of the universe will be pure light, and actually the only way to achieve that is for all of the mass in the universe to fall into black holes and then slowly evaporate via Hawking radiation into photons, and that'll actually be the end state of the universe, which I find amusing. Which we don't actually really know if that'll be the end state of the universe. That is the end state of the universe based on our best current models that we have of cosmology. And it's fascinating to think that that might actually be what happens. But it's also fascinating to think that there are so many more mysteries that we're going to discover between now and then, because that will take trillions upon trillions upon trillions of years. And so between now and then, just imagine all the fantastical things that can happen. And I know that Sir Isaac Newton himself actually predicted, mostly out of frustration, that he did some calculation, and he predicted that if the worlds were going to come to an end, it would actually be a good thing, because it would be, Jesus coming back and the kingdom of heaven and all that. But he calculated that would not happen until at least the year 2060, which I realized would be enough time for me to live to the ripe old age of 70 and die peacefully in my sleep. So, maybe that'll happen. I'll live to the ripe old age of 70. I'll die peacefully in my sleep, happy and healthy, and without any horrible wars having happened. And after that, Jesus will come back and there'll be the kingdom of heaven. But I won't mind, because that'll be a good life, and, I'll have lived a good life. And, I don't know, that seems like a happy thing. But I don't know what's going to happen, do I? So, it's I'm fine with dying not knowing what the future will be, because I get to die at a time where I've seen the course of human history, and I can have a pretty high degree of confidence that the future will be good. But I also have seen the terrible things that can happen, so I know that it's not all going to destroy itself, especially not anytime soon, and I also know whatever comes next, it's going to be something good. So, I don't know. There's going to be terrible things that happen, but something good will happen too.